Alright, hello students. Today we're going to start Unit 14, Simplifying Radicals. And if you look at my little picture right here, this is the radical symbol. Several of us also call it the square root symbol. And some other terminology. What's underneath the radical symbol, or what's in the radical symbol, that is the radicand, and it can be numbers, it can also be variables. Alright, so the radical symbol means to take the square root of the expression under it. So the square root of the radicand. Now let's talk about some numbers that are perfect squares and their square root. The number 1 is a perfect square. The square root is 1 and 1. 4 is a perfect square. The square root is 2. 2 times 2. 9 is a perfect square. The square root is 3 times 3, or 3. 16, 4. 25, the square root is 5. So we're going to go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Alright, so those are all the square roots. Alright, so 6 is the square root of 36. 7 is the square root of 49. 64, 81, 100. Now this next one threw y'all when we were doing those little mini quizzes. 121, 144, 169, 196, and 225. So those are good numbers to have memorized. So the top row, those are called perfect squares, and the bottom row, those are called the square root. So 225 is a perfect square. The square root of 225 is 15. But what we're going to talk about today is about radicals, where the radicand is not a perfect square. Okay, and we're going to factor it into two factors. Notice I can split those two factors into two separate radicals. So for example here, the square root of 12, that is not a perfect square, but it has a factor of 4 and a factor of 3. And what do you know about the square root of 4? It is a perfect square. And the square root of 4 is 2. Is the square root of 3 a perfect square? No. So I leave that underneath the radical. So to simplify the square root of 12, I can simplify it into 2 square roots of 3. So I'm trying to find a factor that is a perfect square. Now there were other factors of 12, okay? Some of you may have said, hey, square root of 6 and the square root of 2. And those are correct, but are either one of those a perfect square? No. Well, let's take it one step further. The square root of 6 is the square root of 3 and the square root of 2. Bring that down. Now, what do you notice here? I have 2 of the same radicals. So if I have 2 of them, I can take the radicand out, and then I still have the square root of 3. So I can still get to the same answer, even if I choose factors that are not perfect squares, just so long as I factor it all the way down and see if there is a pair of factors that are perfect squares. Alright, A radical is in simplest form if there are no perfect square factors other than 1 are in the radicand. For example, if I did the square root of 100 and I said, okay, square root of 4 times square root of 25. Oh, the square root of 4 is a perfect square, 2. And I stopped right there. Well, I can't, because 25 is a perfect square. I would have to reduce that. No fractions in the radicand. Example, we don't want this. The square root of 1/2. We'll talk about radicals as fractions in a little bit. No radicals in the denominator of fractions. So nothing like this with a radical in my denominator. And lastly, no decimals. So don't give me this. Okay? So radical is in simplest form if you have no perfect square factors, no fractions are in the radicand, no radicals are in the denominator of a fraction, and no decimals are in the radical. Alright, so let's look at some examples here. Let's simplify the square root of 18. Alright, well, what are factors of 18? Okay, I've got 1, 18. Are either one of those perfect squares? Nope. 2 and 9. 9's a perfect square. 3 and 6. Are either one of those perfect squares? No. So I'm going to go with the 2 and the 9. Square root of 9, square root of 2. What is the square root of 9? The square root of 9 is a perfect square, and that is 3. So the square root of 9 is 3. Can I simplify the square root of 2? Is it a perfect square? No. There's my simplified answer. Square root of 75. Alright, if you want to write all your factors out, you can. I think that's all of them. So it looks like I'm going to go with the square root of 25 because it is a perfect square. And the square root of 3. 25 is a perfect square. And the square root of 25 is 5. Can I simplify the square root of 3? Nope. There's that one. Alright, now, I have a coefficient in front of this radical. This says 2 times the square root of 162. So I am going to factor 162, and then I'm going to multiply whatever that is by 2. 162, you know, I don't know the factors of 162 right off the top of my head, but I do see that it's an even number. So if I divide 162 by 2, I end up with 81 times 2. Well, I know that 81 is a perfect square. So I have the 2. I have the square root of 81 times the square root of 2. What is the square root of 81? 9. And then, can I simplify the square root of 2? Nope. So now this says 2 times 9 times the square root of 82. Well, I can multiply the 2 times 9, and my simplified answer is 18 square roots of 2. Alright, now, the video is going to stop for just a minute. You're going to work 4, 5, and 6 on your own. And you're going to input the answer on your computer. These are going to be multiple choice. So, input your answer for 4, 5, and 6. After you input your answer for 4, 5, and 6, the video will start back up. Actually, you'll have to scroll down, and I think there's a button for you to push for the video to start up. Alright, see you in a minute.